Okay, here we go. Welcome everyone to session number 243 of Kevin Reads A Course in Miracles. We are in chapter 31, which is the final chapter in the text. Okay, very exciting. And today we will focus on section 4, Roman numeral 4. All right, IV. All right, for all you wonderful medical personnel. Roman numeral 4, entitled The Real Alternative. And city seems to be a little extra today, let's put it that way. Hope it's not too distracting. I waited for the major road repair work to finish, so hopefully there'll be no more jackhammers. Okay, the real alternative. Paragraph 1. There is a tendency to think the world can offer consolation and escape from problems that its purpose is to keep. Why should this be? Because it is a place where choice among illusions seems to be the only choice, and you are in control of outcomes of your choosing. Thus, you think, within the narrow band from birth to death, a little time is given you to use for you alone, a time when everyone conflicts with you, but you can choose a road which will lead you out of conflict and away from difficulties that concern you not. Yet they are your concern. How then can you escape from them by leaving them behind? What must go with you? You will take with you whatever road you choose to walk along. Okay. He says, so there's a tendency to think that we can escape from problems in the world. All right? And he says, but remember, he says, the purpose of the world is to present continuous problems, to prove to you that you separated from the mind that conceived of you. All right? You separated from the mind of God. That's the purpose of the world. Right? So there's a tendency to think the world can offer consolation and escape from problems, that its purpose is to keep. Right? He says, look, this existence here in this form, this earth plane, or whatever planet you're on, right? This is because it's a place where choice among illusions seems to be the only choice. All right, I'm going to take job A or job B. I'm going to have a relationship with person A or person B. I'm going to live here. I'm going to live there. I'm going to wear these types of clothes. I'm going to buy these shoes. I'm going to see this doctor. I'm going to drive this kind of car. Never ending. And he's telling us, he's not telling us don't do these things. You got to be normal. But what he's telling us, what you're doing is you're making choices within the illusion. Right? You're choosing which illusion seems to be the best. Okay? And you think that you're in control of outcomes of your choosing. So he says, thus you think within the narrow band from birth to death, a little time is given you for you to use. A time when everyone conflicts with you. But you think you can choose a road that will lead you out of conflict and away from difficulties that concern you not. Right? He says, yet they are your concern. They are our concern because we still believe we're here and this is what's real. All right? I mean, there's so many of those things that you can plug into these equations, so to speak. Okay, I might move to get away from difficult family situations. Right? And you say, that's not my problem anymore. That's them. That's them. He says, but it's still your problem because you still have them in your mind. Right? Because what must go with you, you will take with you. Whatever road you choose to walk along. Right? We have the mind, and in this case, we have the mind that has aligned itself with the ego. Right? Taking prominence, let's put it that way, because you always have the right mind with you. Right? So he says, look, there's a tendency to think the world can offer consolation and escape from problems. And that's what happens. We continue to look outside the mind, which, for those of you following along, the Course refers to as magic thoughts. We look for solutions outside the mind. Right? And, you know, like the song said, looking for love in all the wrong places. Right? That's what we do. We look for whatever it is we're looking for. We're looking in the wrong place. All right. Paragraph 2. Real choice is no illusion, but the world has none to offer. All its roads but lead to disappointment, nothingness, and death. There is no choice in its alternatives. Seek not escape from problems here. The world was made that problems could not be escaped. Be not deceived by all the different names its roads are given. They have but one end, and each is but the means to gain that end. For it is here that all its roads will lead, however differently they seem to start, however differently they seem to go. Their end is certain, for there is no choice among them. All of them will lead to death. On some you travel gaily for a while before the bleakness enters, and on some the thorns are felt at once. The choice is not what will the ending be, but when it comes. Right? Jesus paints a bleak picture of what happens in the world here. He says they have but one end, and he says that's to maintain the idea of separation. Okay? That's the goal of everything in the world. All right? He says the world was made that problems could not be escaped. All right? It's like someone once asked the famous guru, what is life? And he said, life? It's one damn thing after another. And so it is. But in order to be able to deal with it without getting overwhelmed and depressed and, you know, just completely lose your mind, there's different ways to look at it. There's a different way to look at it. Let's put it that way. But let's not jump to the end here. All right. He says there is no choice. He says real choice is no illusion. All right. So the real choice, when I choose, help me to see correctly. I go to the right mind. Right? And I keep choosing that. He says that's the real choice. It's in your mind. To have your perception corrected. That's when you get led along the path as if you're going through the garden. Right? Because the world has none to offer. Right? All its roads lead to disappointment, nothingness, and death. All right? He says their end is certain. He keeps repeating that in this paragraph here. Be not deceived by the names its roads are given. We can, your good career, good health, good relationships, whatever road it is. He says that, look, they really have but one end. And each is but the means to gain that end. That's to maintain separation. For it is here that all roads will lead, however differently they seem to start. And he says, that I always like these sentences, but they're split by paragraph. He says, on some of these roads, on some you travel gaily for a while. You're having a great time before the bleakness enters. And on some the thorns are felt at once. Right? He says, the choice is not what will the ending be, but when it comes. That famous saying, all good things must come to an end. Right? And so he says in paragraph 3, there is no choice where every end is sure. Right? And then I always like this sentence by Jesus. He goes, sentence 2, perhaps you would prefer to try them all. Right? Perhaps you'd like to try everything, which I can relate to. We do. Just let me try this, let me try that. Perhaps you would prefer to try them all before you really learn that they are but one. The roads this world can offer seem to be quite large in number, but the time must come when everyone begins to see how like they are to one another. Men have died on seeing this, because they saw no way except the pathways offered by the world. And learning they led nowhere, they lost their hope. And yet this was the time they could have learned their greatest lesson. All must reach this point and go beyond it. It is true indeed there is no choice at all within the world, but that is not the lesson in itself. The lesson has a purpose, and in this you come to understand what it is for. Right? The lesson that there is something beyond this world, and we go to where this world emanated from, the mind. We go to where everything emanates, from which everything emanates. The mind, that's what there is to learn. There is something beyond the form. He says, all must reach this point. And you can see, if you know people, some people, as they get older and older, they become depressed, very depressed. Because they learned that all these roads led nowhere. Unless they're in conjunction with the Holy Spirit, with their higher self. And the purpose now is switched to seeing the oneness, to having the oneness rise up in your mind, to having the idea that you never left your source arise in your mind, and letting everything in the world, every road, let it reflect that. That's the lesson to be learned. Right? He says, why would you seek another road in paragraph 4? Why would you seek to try another road, another person, or another place, when you have learned the way the lesson starts, but do not yet perceive what it is for? Its purpose is the answer to the search that all must undertake, who still believe there is another answer to be found. Learn now, without despair, there is no hope of answer in the world. But do not judge the lesson that has begun with this. Seek not another signpost in the world that seems to point to still another road. No longer look for hope where there is none. Make fast your learning now, and understand you but waste time unless you go beyond what you have learned to what is yet to learn. For from this lowest point will learning lead to heights of happiness, in which you see the purpose of the lesson shining clear and perfectly within your learning grasp. So he says, learn now without despair. There's no hope of answer in this world. Why would you seek another? Right? Another road, another person, another place. When you have learned the way the lesson starts, all right, and but you have not yet perceived what it is for. We have not yet perceived that all these lessons that the world has to offer are to teach us that we're separated from the mind that created us. Right? And when we see there's no hope in the world, we can get very, very desperate. We can despair. I was always very proud of myself when I would read this. I remember back in high school, and long time ago in Seminary High School in Queens County, New York City, Archdiocese of Brooklyn. The essay assignment was, what is the worst thing that could happen? That was the essay assignment. And after giving it some thought, my essay was that the worst thing that could happen was that I would despair. I would say there's no hope. Right? And I always thought that's the worst. And this is what Jesus is telling us here. He said, men have died on seeing that there's no hope in these worldly remedies, worldly roads. Men have died on seeing it when they could have learned their biggest lesson, right, is that there's something beyond the world. There's something beyond form. And we can contact that. It is in our mind. The answers are in the mind. Right? Go to where the world came from. Hope is in the mind. And he says, when you get to that, that's your lowest point, when you have that realization that this world's got nothing to offer me. He says, from this lowest point, will learning lead to heights of happiness. Right? When I turn to the Holy Spirit, when I turn within, and I say, help me. Help me to see correctly. Help me to see what I'm missing here. Just help. He says, then you're on the road. You're on the road that will lead to heights of happiness. Perception will be changed. As you go along, perceptions will be changed. And you will experience the happiness incrementally. It's a little bit much for us to take it all at once. From this lowest point will learning lead to heights of happiness, in which you see the pursuit, in which you see the purpose of the lesson shining clear and perfectly within your learning grasp, within your ability to learn. You'll see the lesson shining brilliantly within everything. And the lesson will be that you never left the mind. You never left the mind that thought of you. You are totally innocent. You never sinned. You never separated. And he says, that is within your learning grasp. Right? Remember, he started out telling Helen how much she had learned, how much she taught herself. He says, so don't tell me this is hard to learn. Right? This is all within your learning grasp. Paragraph 5. Who would be willing to be turned away from all the roadways of the world unless he understood their real futility? Is it not needful that he should begin with this, to seek another way instead? For while he sees a choice where there is none, what power of decision can he use? The great release of power must begin with learning where it really has a use, and what decision has power if it be applied in situations without a choice. Right? He says, who would be willing to be turned away from all the roadways of the world, right? Unless you understand they go nowhere, unless you understand their futility, unless you come to that realization. Right? Is it not needful that he should begin with this? So we have to begin at the bottom. We have to realize, oh, man, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. For while he sees a choice where there is none, this is what power of decision can he use? He says, you can only decide between illusions, as he said. So what power of decision can he use if you think there's still a choice within the world? He says the great release of power must begin with learning where it really has a use. Right? So the great release of power is to learn where our decisions have a use in the mind. Right? The decision maker is the one in charge. Where the power of that decision that says, okay, help me to see correctly. I'm willing to see. I want to experience the oneness. I want to experience peace of mind. Help me walk through this world using different eyes, using the eyes of Jesus. You want to put it that way. I want to see differently. That's the big deal. That's where the great release of power begins. Right? With your power of choice to choose. I want to remember the oneness. Bring me home. All right. The great release of power must begin with learning where it really has a use in the mind. And what decision has power if it be applied in situations without a choice? Because these decisions have no power here in the world. They seem to, but they don't. Because they all lead to the same place. Right? Paragraph 6. The learning that the world can offer but one choice, no matter what its forms may be, is the beginning of acceptance that there is a real alternative instead. To fight against this step is to defeat your purpose here. You did not come to learn to find a road the world does not contain. The search for different pathways in the world is but the search for different forms of truth. And this would keep the truth from being reached. All right. So he reiterates, just puts it in different words. You gotta, it's like they say in the 12-step programs. The first thing is you gotta realize you got a problem. All right. You have to admit that this world offers no real choices. They all go the same way. They all end the same way, really. even though on some you travel gaily for a while. Right? Even if you meet the love of your life, and you travel gaily for years with this person, right? With this pet. You experience love any way you can, any way that you invite it in, but next thing you know, the form is gone. Right? That person, place, or thing is no longer extant. It's no longer in existence. What happens then? We need to find an alternative, a real alternative. Now, Jesus is not saying don't have pets that you love, don't have people that you love, don't have jobs or places that you love. Just ask, help me to see them correctly. Help me to use them to reflect the oneness of the universe. Right? Help me to use these things correctly. That's the decision that brings us to heights of happiness. Right? That we're not dependent on something outside the mind to bring us happiness. So he says, so this learning is the beginning of acceptance that there is a real alternative. Right? And he says to fight against this step is to defeat your purpose here. All right? To fight against it is to defeat your purpose here. Your purpose here is to remember who you are. Right? That's our purpose. It's to remember our connection to the oneness and let that extend through the mind. Right? He says, but unless you accept that that's the only real alternative, he says, you're defeating your purpose here. And as some ancient sages would say, you are stuck on the wheel of karma. Right? But at some point you will remember. You will choose to remember. Right? At some point you will say, oh yeah, I want to remember the oneness. I want to see my innocence. I want to see everyone's innocence. All right. You did not come to learn to find a road the world does not contain. All right. You didn't come here to find these silly roads. You came to find that road that's in your mind that will take you back to the memory of who you really are. The search for different pathways in the world is but the search for different forms of truth. And chapters ago, in the laws of chaos, right, of which this world is chaotic, all right, the first law of chaos is that the truth is different for everybody. You see it manifest, especially in these times. All right, that creates a chaotic existence, that the truth is different for everyone. All right? The search for different pathways in the world is but the search for different forms of truth. And this would keep the truth from being reached. All right? This chaos, this faux search for truth, so it keeps the truth from being realized. Paragraph 7. Think not that happiness is ever found by following a road away from it. This makes no sense and cannot be the way. To those who seem to find this course to be too difficult to learn, let me repeat that to achieve a goal, you must proceed in its direction, not away from it. And every road that leads the other way will not advance the purpose to be found. If this be difficult to understand, then is this course impossible to learn. But only then, for otherwise it is a simple teaching in the obvious. If my father were alive, he would love that series of sentences here. To think, he says, think not that happiness is ever found by following a road away from it. Right? He says, it makes no sense. Right? And he repeats Helen's statement that she thought it was too difficult to learn. He said, to you who seem to find this course too difficult to learn, he says, let me repeat that to achieve a goal, you must proceed in its direction, not away from it. All right. In other words, he's telling us that we don't learn this course because we don't want to. Right? We proceed in the other direction. Right? And like I say, it doesn't make you bad. It just keeps you in the wheel of karma. It keeps you in the rat race. Keeps you in this cycle of reincarnation. All right? Whatever way you want to believe in things, you know. So he says, you must proceed in its direction. Don't fight it. Right? Look at the fact that I don't want to learn it. That's what makes the course difficult. Just admit it. Hey, nobody says you have to read the Course in Miracles. You have to study it. Right? But just think about it. You know, if you into it, you're into it. Then you say, it doesn't work for me. I can't. Sometimes I don't get it, and all this. You know. Take a look at yourself. Take your inventory, as they say. And it's quite possible that you don't want to learn it. You don't want to learn that there's something other than this world. Right? That could be a scary thought for a lot of people. But sooner or later, it won't be. You know, it's somewhere along the hologram of time. It won't be a scary thought. But as Jesus says in another place, why waste time? Why wait? He says, why wait for heaven? All right. He says, you did not come to learn to find a road the world does not contain. You can hear the meter. To search for different pathways in the world is but the search for different forms of truth. And this would keep the truth from being reached. Paragraph 7. Think not that happiness is ever found by following a road away from it. This makes no sense and cannot be the way. To those who seem to find this course to be too difficult, let me repeat that to achieve a goal, you must proceed in its direction, not away from it. And every road that leads the other way will not advance the purpose to be found. If this be difficult to understand, then this course is impossible to learn. But only then, for otherwise it is a simple teaching in the obvious. Obviously, I lost my place and I reread that paragraph again. But that's cool. All right. He says, otherwise, he goes, this is really a simple teaching in the obvious. All right. what is he talking about? He's got over 600 pages of Shakespearean content here. It's a simple teaching in the obvious. And the simple teaching is that what's false is false, and what's true is true. Right? And what's false is that you separated from the mind of God. What's true is that you never left. You're still there. And that's what we're trying to remember. All right. Paragraph 8. There is a choice that you have power to make when you have seen the real alternatives. Until that point is reached, you have no choice. And you can but decide how you would choose better to deceive yourself again. This course attempts to teach you no more than that. The power of decision cannot lie in choosing different forms of what is still the same illusion and the same mistake. All choices in the world depend on this. You choose between your brother and yourself, and you will gain as much as he will lose, and what you lose is what is given him. How utterly opposed to truth is this, when all the lesson's purpose is to teach that what your brother loses, you have lost, and what he gains is what is given you. All right. He keeps repeating the same ideas throughout this section. All right. He says there is a choice that you have power to make when you've seen the real alternatives. All right? The real alternative is to remember who you are. Right? To remember that you have a mind, and all your thoughts are contained there. Until that point is reached, you have no choice. Because as we go along mindlessly in the world, and it's the world's purpose to keep us mindless, he says you really have no choice. Right? You can only choose on how to better deceive yourself. So he's repeating the same things in different ways. So he says this course attempts, in paragraph 8, sentence 3, this course attempts to teach no more than that the power of decision cannot lie in choosing different forms of what is still the same illusion and the same mistake. The power of this, there's no power of decision if I'm just choosing between illusions. And these illusions, the purpose of them is to keep me mindless, to keep me from remembering that I have a mind, and I can choose to communicate with my higher self, with the memory of who I am, and I can start to see my way back. I could start to use the world to help me get back. Right? Because in this world, all your choices depend on sacrifice. It's one or the other. That's what he's talking about here. All choices in this world depend on this. You choose between your brother and yourself. It's me or you. All right? That's the way the world is. Just try to observe that in your micro world and your macro world. All right? Just be an observer. All right? Try not to let it frighten you. Don't condemn yourself or anybody else. It's just the way it is. Just remember that, oh yeah, there is another way of looking at things. There is another alternative than deciding things within the illusion. Otherwise, it's just that you will gain as much as the other guy loses. And what you lose is what is given him. So what you lose is what he gets. Because how utterly opposed to truth is this? Right? He says, that is just so completely opposed to the truth. that me or you mindset. Because what your brother loses, you have lost. Right? When I say he's guilty, I've lost my innocence. Right? When all the lesson's purpose is to teach that what your brother loses, you have lost. And what he gains is what is given you. When I am willing to see the truth about the other, when I'm willing to experience the innocence of the other, I experience my own innocence. The memory of my innocence is returning to me. It's given me, as the sentence says. Right. And in these, I'm going to read the next two paragraphs, 9 and 10. I'm going to read them together because he keeps saying the same, rejoicing in the same idea. Right. It's the heart of the atonement, as we say, that ideas do not leave their source. The idea of you never left the mind that thought of you. Right? The original creator had an idea of you, and there you are. You never left that. Right? Ideas cannot leave the mind that thinks of them. Right? That's the heart of the atonement, the heart of the idea that you're never separated from the mind of God. Paragraph 9. He has not left his thoughts, but you forgot his presence and remembered not his love. No pathway in the world can lead to him, nor any worldly goal be one with his. What road in all the world will lead within, when every road was made to separate the journey from the purpose it must have, unless it be but futile wandering? All roads that lead away from what you are will lead you to confusion and despair. Yet he has never left his thoughts to die, without their source forever in themselves. He has not left his thoughts. He could no more depart from them than they could keep him out. In unity with him do they abide, and in their oneness both are kept complete. There is no road that leads away from him. A journey from yourself does not exist. How foolish and insane it is to think that there could be a road with such an aim. Where could it go? And how could you be made to travel on it, walking there without your own reality at one with you? Right? He has not left his thoughts. The Christ, together with God. All right. The Christ, he has not left his thoughts, but you forgot his presence and remembered not his love. Right? That's what we've done. We forgot. Right? But he didn't forget. He hasn't left the mind. No pathway in the world can lead to him, right? Nor any worldly goal be one with his. Right? What road in all the world will lead within, when every road was made to separate the journey from the purpose it must have, unless it be futile wandering? Every road in the world was made to separate the journey from the purpose that it should have, which is to remember who you really are. He goes, and then it just becomes futile wandering. all roads that lead away from what you are will lead you to confusion and despair. Right? And, you can take an inventory of yourself and your comings and goings. All right? And don't condemn yourself. Just realize, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. I thought happiness was over here. I thought security was over here. I thought love was over here. It doesn't make you bad, as we say. It just leads you to confusion and ultimately despair. Right? Yet has he never left his thoughts to die. Right? You're not wandering this world by yourself. You're not alone. You are still in the mind that thought of you. You're still surrounded by that love. Right? He's never left you to die without their source forever in themselves. Right? Your source is forever in yourself. Your source is forever in your mind. We just need to tap into it. He has not left his thoughts, paragraph 10. He could no more depart from them than they could keep him out. Right? You can't keep out God, right? And God can't keep you out. He's got no desire to do that. You're just there. That's the oneness. Even the idea of using God and you and God and the Christ, there's always that shadow of duality, but it's just not. There is no duality. There's only the oneness. You can't be kept out. In unity with him do they abide. We abide in the oneness. We abide in the unity. And in their oneness, both are kept complete. Right? Father and Son are complete in the oneness. Sentence 4, paragraph 10. There is no road that leads away from him. A journey from yourself does not exist. How foolish and insane it is to think that there could be a road with such an aim. Right? It's crazy. He says foolish and insane to think that you could separate from the mind that thought of you, that you could go down a road away from that. How foolish and insane it is to think there could be a road with such an aim. Where could it go? And how could you be made to travel on it, walking there without your own reality at one with you? Right? How could you be made to go along this road without your own reality with you? Right? Dissociated from your own reality. How could you do that? Right? And we believe we could. Until we get to the point where it just doesn't work anymore. What am I doing here? And in that case, he says in paragraph 11, forgive yourself your madness. All right? Be gentle with yourself. Forgive yourself your madness. And forget all senseless journeys and all goalless aims. They have no meaning. You cannot escape from what you are. For God is merciful and did not let his Son abandon him. For what he is, be thankful. For in that is your escape from madness and from death. Nowhere but where he is can you be found. There is no path that does not lead to him. Right? He says, nowhere but where he is can you be found. You cannot be separated from your source. You cannot be separated from God. He says, there is no path that does not lead to him. Eventually, everyone will remember. Eventually, everyone will remember. Because we will get to that point where it's dank and dark and you say, oh my God, there's nothing here. What am I going to do? You know, and as he said, men have died on seeing this. I just, you know, a lot of spiritual paths, you know, they'll say that a lot of insight, a lot of inspiration, whatever you want to call it, enlightenment comes in our darkest nights, the dark night of the soul. Right? I mean, I remember listening to Eckhart Tolle talk about his great despair. He had his suicide planned out. And he was having this anxiety in the middle of the night. And he said, I can't take it anymore. And I think the question he asked himself is, who is the one that can't take it anymore? And he said, at that moment, this great awareness just transformed him. It just transformed him. Now, not everybody has what they call in AA the white light moment. Right? Not everybody is struck off their horse on the way to Damascus, like St. Paul. Right? But everybody, he says, must get to the point where you realize that, you know, it's not working. This world is not working. Right? And at that point, that's when you come in. Come inside. That's the alternative. Right? There's no more drugs or drinks or jobs or people or activities or anything. Just come inside. That's where the real alternative is. Right? Forget your senseless journeys. And he says, and forgive yourself your madness. You just look and you go, yeah, really, that was nuts. But don't condemn yourself for it. All right. You know, the pathways of the world are very enticing. And at points, we don't know that there's another way. Until we get to that point where, wow, this is just none of this stuff just doesn't work out, really. Right? Everywhere I turn, it's a dead end. Right? So the real alternative is to come into the mind and engage with your guide, your higher self, however you want to put it. Ask the Holy Spirit, the image of Jesus, some image of unconditional love, some idea of unconditional love, if you can't deal with those Christian symbols. Come into the mind and sit in the unconditional love and ask for guidance, ask for correction. That's the choice. That's the real alternative. Okay. There is no path that does not lead to him. All righty then. Thank you, and I look forward to the next sessions. We're getting close to the end. All right, take care now.